A wife is supposed to be a supportive partner to her husband, but if she disobeys, it could lead to divorce. My husband James took my credit card and spent a lot of money while I was busy working. They were enjoying a vacation abroad, and I felt very disrespected. Angry and upset, I started thinking of a way to get back at him. My name is Karen Gillan, and I used to be a famous actress in the United States. I shone brightly in Hollywood, charming people all over the world and making news internationally. My fame was huge. I stopped being in the spotlight when I married James, who used to manage my career. He took great care of everything for me, from my health to my personal life. Now, we run several fashion stores together. I stepped away from fame when I was 23, even though I was very popular at the time. This decision caused a lot of media attention and disappointed my fans, who begged me not to leave. There were a lot of rumors and stories in the newspapers. Despite all this, James and I married happily, and everyone supported us. Just before I retired, I started my own fashion brand, and now James works for me in finance while I lead our business. Life seemed perfect, but recently James has been acting odd. He seems tired and down all the time. I asked him if something was wrong at work, knowing he tends to keep his problems to himself. I often checked on James because he's not the type to talk about his problems. He waits for me to help him out. Even though it was a bit hard for me, I didn't mind because he had dealt with my difficult situations in the past. I always appreciated his help more than I got annoyed. One day, James suddenly said, "I'm sick of just following your orders." His words surprised me. I had no idea he felt that way. James sometimes said harsh things when he was stressed from work. He tried to act strong there, so he probably felt he couldn't express his frustration anywhere else. I remembered how I used to snap at him when I was an actress, so I could understand his feelings. But still, his words shocked me, and I found myself shaking. I've been holding back. Karen is always busy, and I'm just there to support her, he continued. Even though James earns well, he's still an employee at our company, and I earn more than him. But I never thought that who earns more should matter in our marriage. His complaints really threw me off. Even when you come home, you're all about work. When we go shopping, you just buy whatever you want. How do you think that makes me feel? He said. Despite how things looked, he'd been very patient. Why can't you be more considerate? He asked, looking unhappy. Honestly, his words annoyed me. Our home is mostly supported by my income. His salary is for him to enjoy, and I've always seen that as my way of thanking him for all he has done and supported me with. There were times when he financially supported me when we had less. I wanted to make it up to him for all the personal time he gave up for me until I retired. It hurt to hear him sound so ungrateful. The things I buy are from the savings I manage. If anyone is making sacrifices, it's me. This thought made me angry. Karen, you're too free. I want more time off and to travel leisurely, James said. The salary's good since joining the company, but there's just no time. I left showbiz and joined your company to support you, Karen. Don't I deserve more gratitude? Stop putting your own time first and give me a break. When I retired from showbiz, James continued working as a manager. But once my business started doing well, he wanted to work with me. He said, "If I join the company and stay by your side, Karen, you won't be lonely. I want to be there for you." I wanted to spend time with him, so I let him join. I never asked him to, so I don't understand why he's treating me like this now. Is this life not enough for him? Isn't he being too selfish? While I was thinking this, James made a request that felt like he was adding insult to injury. He said, "My parents' 62th birthday is coming up. Can I take 3 weeks off to celebrate? I want to take them on a trip to Australia. They've never been, and I want to show them the tasty food and beautiful sights." I was surprised by his request and felt something was off. Asking for 3 weeks off is a small thing that he could easily have done at work without making a fuss. Our company is fair, and no one would mind if someone took leave. Yet he chose to make it a big deal and negotiate directly with me. I felt something wasn't right, but these were just suspicions, nothing solid. Trying to keep my cool, I answered, "I'm okay with that, but I can't make it this year. There's a crucial fashion show for my models, and I need to prepare for the London collection. My schedule just doesn't allow it. Can you ask if next year would work? I can adjust my schedule then." As a daughter-in-law, I'm expected to attend my in-laws' 62 birthday celebration. However, our company has 2 big events this year, leaving no room for personal travel. I tried to negotiate a different date, but James refused with a smile, saying, "It's fine, we'll just celebrate with my side of the family. I want to spend some quality family time. Being the accountant, my absence for a week won't really disrupt work, right?" James's words about wanting to spend time just with his family really hurt me. He suggested that I was a nuisance, and that cut deep. "So, how about it? I deserve some free time too, right?" James often speaks without thinking. He's not mean, just sometimes careless. That's one of his faults, but I chose him as my life partner, knowing no one is perfect. However, I can't accept how he's speaking to me now, even if he doesn't mean it. Why do I have to be spoken to like this? Doesn't he care about me? Hey Karen, are you listening to me? I owe a lot to James's parents. Though I can't often visit because of work, they always treat me like their own child and praise my work. "We're so happy to have such a wonderful daughter," his mother said when I married into the family, and his father celebrated our marriage with joy. It's their 62 celebration, and I understand wanting to celebrate it this year, but how can I agree happily after being spoken to like that? It doesn't matter to me. Take 1 week or 2, do as you like. I couldn't hold back my anger and showed it openly. This probably upset James. He stood up, visibly upset, and left the living room without a word. We've been sleeping in separate bedrooms because of work, and from that day until his trip, we didn't see each other at all. Is that really true? Isn't your husband being too harsh? My secretary, noticing my unusual demeanor the day James left for his trip, pressed me for details. She's an exceptional talent and has been supporting me since I started managing the company. As women, we often see eye to eye, and sometimes she's even more reliable than my husband. She's quick-witted yet caring, always there to support me when I'm down or about to make a mistake. I think of her like family. She looks up to me like a real sister, and I often share my thoughts with her. Her advice is wise beyond her years and always helpful. This time, she noticed something was wrong and kindly asked me about it. At first, I hesitated to open up, but then I realized that keeping it in could affect my work. I decided to tell her everything that had happened up to today. She looked really angry when I told her. "If I were you, I'd have given him a piece of my mind. You've been too soft on your husband, boss. I get that you love him, but you can't let him walk all over you," she said. Her straightforward advice really hit me. In an environment where everyone usually hesitates to speak up, she's the only one who treats me as an equal. I truly value this openness and comfort. Being in a higher position often means showing more humility and restraint, and having someone who can confront me directly like she does is really precious. "You're right. What should I do?" I asked her. "You can call him, right? Why not talk after work today? Don't worry about spoiling his trip. If things keep going like this, you might be headed for divorce," she continued, pressing the point like an older sister. I had no choice but to agree with her suggestion. I decided to call him right after work. He's in Australia, and there's about a 14-hour time difference from the US. For example, if it's 6:00 p.m. here, it's 8:00 a.m. there, about the time they would finish their breakfast. I had sent him an email in advance to let him know I needed to talk, so he should be expecting my call. I called thinking he'd surely answer, but he didn't pick up. Maybe he's still enjoying himself with everyone. I'll try calling again later. I tried calling every 50 minutes, but still no answer. Worried, I contacted my mother-in-law to check on him. "Hello, Karen. You must be tired. I'm sorry we went on this trip without you. We told James we'd prefer you'd be with us, but he insisted." I knew from James that his mother used to be a strict teacher, but now she's much gentler and always cares about how busy I am. "Never mind. We're so busy at the company this year I couldn't make time. I'll definitely make it up to you next year, okay?" "Oh, don't worry about it," she replied kindly. "Just having this wonderful trip as a gift from you is more than enough for us." Her words, warm like a smile, seemed strange to me. "Wait, a gift?" I asked, confused by the term. She seemed surprised by my question. "Oh, isn't it? James told us this trip was fully paid for by you since you couldn't join." I couldn't help but shout in surprise over the phone. Realizing I didn't know anything from my reaction, my mother-in-law quickly explained, "Isn't this the trip Karen arranged? James paid for everything with Karen card, so I thought it was from you." The trip included James's parents and his sister's family, 6 people in total. The flight alone cost about $2,000 per person minimum, and with other expenses, it easily exceeded $22,000. It's outrageous to use such a large amount without asking me, especially since I usually cover living expenses. James doesn't gamble or smoke, so his salary should be intact. He definitely earns enough to afford such expenses, yet he didn't. With him not answering my calls, my anger started to boil. Noticing my upset, my mother-in-law spoke with concern. "Karen, are you okay? We'll pay back every penny." James insisted on covering everything, which seemed odd. "My husband and I decided to pay you back later. We miss you and plan to visit you." Thinking the trip was based on a terrible plan, she continued to comfort me. "You're not at fault. It's also your 62 celebration, so please use that money for your enjoyment. I'll definitely get James to pay for it, but could you tell me more about the trip's planning?" I was trying to figure out what James was up to when I realized this trip must have been planned months ago without me knowing. At that moment, I started to doubt him. Then, my mother-in-law revealed a shocking fact. The trip was actually suggested by James's sister and her husband. Surprisingly, it was James's sister and her husband who always criticized me who initiated the trip. James's brother-in-law, an executive at a company competing with mine, looked down on me for being a female CEO. Because of his high pride, James never stood up to his sister. The sight of James showing respect to someone other than herself must have caught my sister-in-law's attention. Even though she has always controlled James, I couldn't stand the fact that she got offended by James just being slightly nice to someone else. With their strong sense of rivalry, my sister-in-law and her husband disliked me, and I always tried to avoid them as much as possible. This couple, always competitive and disliking me, possibly planned this trip to create a rift and exclude me, using James as their source of money. "I'm so sorry, I didn't know anything. James told me you were busy and asked us not to contact you directly," my mother-in-law said. "If my in-laws and I were to communicate, it would have exposed the plan and potentially caused a rift in our marriage." To prevent this, James had already advised his parents not to reach out to me because of my busy schedule. His words were absolute to them. They decided to follow his advice and planned to express their gratitude when they returned. "Karen, did you give James a card or something?" "He was paying with a gold card I've never seen before," my father-in-law asked suddenly. He must have been listening in, given his urgent tone. His question confirmed my suspicions the moment he mentioned the gold card. I checked my safe and found that the gold card he mentioned was missing. This card is crucial for our company and only James, and I knew the safe's password. I never thought James would steal from the company, but it was clear he had taken the card. As the finance manager, he could easily change the records. Realizing he was misusing company funds, my anger grew, and I told my in-laws what had happened. They turned pale with shock. What should we do? Are we part of this theft? We'll go back with James immediately. We're as guilty as he is, even if we didn't know. My mother-in-law panicked. My father-in-law, who always takes his responsibilities seriously, agreed, we'll accept our punishment once we're back. I shook my head, disagreeing. No need for that. You were just tricked by James. You're not at fault, but I can't let James and his sister's family get away with this. We don't need punishment, but could you help me with something? I continued. I ignored James' actions until now, and that's my fault. He's taken me for granted, thinking he can just apologize and get away with it. This isn't just a personal problem. It's about the company. We need to teach him a lesson. All right, we'll do whatever we can to help, they responded. So we began planning how to get back at James. I was surprised by my own cleverness, but my love for James had turned into hatred and anger. Initially, my in-laws were hesitant about this harsh plan, but as parents, they finally decided to stand by me. Just as we were discussing this, James unexpectedly called. I ended the call with my in-laws and picked up James's call. What's up? We're enjoying a family-only trip, so what's this important talk about? James's sarcastic tone irritated me even more. You took your time calling. Did you go a little wild, huh? No way, just having drinks at a nearby bar with Mom and Dad. This confirmed he was lying. I had just spoken to his parents, and there was no noisy bar sound in the background. Besides, they had no reason to lie to me. He was probably out causing trouble with his sister's family. His words cooled my feelings for him completely. Oh really? By the way, James, you haven't been messing with the company's expenses, have you? His attitude changed instantly at my unexpected question. What's that all about? His tone, usually lighthearted, turned dead serious. Was this his true nature? Seeing his attitude shift as if he now saw me as an enemy, I faced him with equal firmness. Just checking, since there will be an audit at the company soon. Are you suspecting me? His defensive reaction showed his guilt. I couldn't help but laugh at his poor response. What's wrong? I was just concerned, and you're talking about suspicion. Did you do something wrong? No, anyway, the house isn't in a mess when I get back, right? Realizing he was digging himself deeper, he suddenly changed the subject. His actions only made him look more suspicious. I was almost impressed by his foolishness. Who knows? I've been busy with work too. Give me a break. I hate coming back to a dirty house with bugs. A wife is her husband's maid. Disobey and it's divorce. Even our executive says that to his wife. Looks like I might have to do the same, right? You wouldn't want that, so keep the house clean. I had never seen him getting along with the executive. His current words were probably all his own thoughts. But aware of his weaker position, he used the third person to express them. His patheticness made me sigh. Sure, I'll keep that in mind. There was no need to talk to him any longer. James clearly looked down on me, even embezzling company funds. Embezzlement is a serious crime, and I could take him to the police. No mercy even for a spouse, but that alone wouldn't satisfy me after ending the call with James. The next day, while I was busy preparing for the fashion show, I made a phone call to a certain place. Of course, James bombarded me with calls. I noticed his calls late at night while I was out. Luckily, my secretary was driving, so I answered James's call on speaker. You're late. What have you been doing? His voice was rougher than I'd ever heard, surprising both my secretary and me. What do you mean? I was working. Did you do something yesterday? Do something like what? Don't play dumb. Tell me the truth. James was in complete panic, and in the background, I could hear several Australia men and my sister-in-law and her husband confronting him. It sounded noisy. Something wrong? I asked. No, it's just James, who had been blustering, suddenly began to stammer. He realized that admitting anything would put him in a very disadvantageous position. His odd behavior made me explain to him what was coming. Too bad, James. You were supposed to be having a blast in Australia, but it seems your dream turned into a nightmare overnight. Huh. But it's what you deserve for misusing someone else's money. You did something, didn't you? As he reacted weirdly, I revealed what I had done the day before. I had contacted the president of the credit card company I was contracted with. Despite it being after hours, he agreed to help me due to our long-standing relationship. He immediately suspended the company's credit card. If a credit card is misused, the company doesn't have to pay the store, leaving the store at a loss. However, James had arranged to pay the entire bill at checkout. So with the card blocked, he couldn't pay and was now being interrogated by the hotel receptionists. James, Mom and Dad have already checked out. The taxi I reserved for them has left with them, so there's no one coming to pick you up, I said. My sister-in-law, who was cornered, bombarded James, asking what to do next. Hearing this, James panicked even more and directed his anger at me. How can you do this and think it's okay? Are you ready for a divorce? Go ahead. I'd rather not have a husband who steals from the company. I've already talked to a lawyer, and we're starting the divorce process, I told James. He was clearly shaken by my calm reaction. I've ignored so much of what you've done, James. There was a time when you supported my work, and I was grateful, but I've reached my limit. My patience is gone, I continued. That can't be. James realized he was in a real crisis and let out a desperate cry. The receptionist kept demanding payment from James and his group, who were now trapped in despair. None of them spoke Australia and were relying on a guide to communicate. Hearing their situation, I suggested switching the call to me. No one there speaks Australia, right? Let me talk to them for you. You're going to help? James sounded relieved, thinking I had changed my mind. Without hesitation, he handed his phone to them. I spoke to the receptionists in Australia, explained the situation, and they understood quickly and seemed cooperative. To ease their worries, I also gave them my contact information, which my secretary noted down. After a friendly chat, they returned the phone to James. What happened? Did you sort it out? James asked. Yes, I've taken care of it. Now it's up to you guys. Really? You're a lifesaver, Karen. I love you, he said, then hurried off, apparently called by the receptionists. James, clueless, ended the call and followed them. Are you sure about this? It probably won't end well, my secretary asked. Perfect, right? It's ideal for them to see hell, I responded. An hour later, as expected, I received a barrage of calls again from James. When I answered the call, James was on the line, his voice full of distress. Karen, what's going on here? What is this place? He cried out and showed me through a video call the image of a slum area in Sydney, Australia. James and his sister's family were there, looking miserable and stripped of their belongings. They had been taken to what's considered the most dangerous place in Australia, which was completely unexpected. When I was talking to the receptionist earlier, he had mentioned he was a big fan and promised to arrange a severe punishment, but I never thought he meant this place. I couldn't help but laugh at their predicament. Lucky you're still alive in Australia's most dangerous place. It's a miracle, really. What? Wait, Karen, what's this about? Explain yourself and come help us right now, James pleaded. Since it was a video call, they could probably hear everything clearly. Behind them, many homeless people were surrounding James and his group, causing chaos. You guys were causing trouble for Karen. You reap what you sow. Time for reflection, added my in-laws, joining the call unexpectedly. Mom, Dad, what are you doing? James was shocked. A friend of Karen flew us back in a private jet. We returned to the U.S., and Karen picked us up. We realized you were trying to set Karen up. We asked her to do as she pleases with you guys, they explained. As they said this, the onlookers behind them started confronting James's sister and her husband. The people living in this rough area were ruthless. If you wore anything valuable, even women were not spared. They raised their voices while on the video call. In such a dangerous neighborhood, it's no surprise they became perfect targets. I addressed the crowd in Australia, loud enough for them to hear, telling them these men had been using my card illegally and had treated me horribly. I encouraged the locals to do as they pleased with James and his group, and they eagerly agreed to give them a hard time. Suddenly, the call ended, probably because someone snatched the phone. After that, James and his group were stuck living in the harsh conditions of the slum, treated poorly by the locals. Without money to return to the US, they were essentially trapped abroad. I later confirmed with the hotel receptionist that an acquaintance of his, who is a leader in that slum, had agreed to look after James and his group. In return for his help, I promised to treat him to some good liquor the next time and assured him not to worry. They made a deal to keep James and his group safe from life-threatening situations. In return, I agreed to perform at that hotel, something I hadn't done in a long time. The receptionist mentioned that a live performance video of mine, the only one I ever released, was still his treasure. He invited me to stay at their hotel and sing for them, promising VIP treatment. Following this, I successfully got my revenge on James and his group with the help of the men from the hotel. I also managed to divorce James. I felt refreshed and have been enjoying life with my in-laws. James's sister and her husband were fired from their jobs for unexcused absences. Their phones were taken by the locals, leaving them without a way to contact anyone. My in-laws explained the situation well, so it didn't become a police matter, and no one seemed to care about them. Thus, my ties with James were completely severed. Since then, I've been focusing on work and living a happy life. Occasionally, I call the receptionist to check on James and his group. They're still living in tough conditions, but I don't feel sorry for them. I asked to spare their lives, and now I'm enjoying my life to the fullest.